Boris Johnson has condemned Russia for unleashing a tidal wave of violence against Ukraine without provocation or credible excuse. In an address to the nation, Mr. Johnson warned the parents of Russian soldiers that their children would lose their lives and Moscow would achieve pariah status. He said, "Innumerable missiles and bombs have been raining down on an entirely innocent population. A vast invasion is underway, by land, by sea and by air." The Prime Minister said a massive package of sanctions had been drawn up to hobble Russia's economy, after his previous package was branded not good enough, and vowed to reduce dependence on Russian oil and gas. Mr. Johnson added, "Our mission is clear. Diplomatically, politically, economically and eventually militarily, this hideous and barbaric venture of Vladimir Putin must end in failure." Number 10 later played down speculation this was a hint at British boots on the ground, saying, he was referring to the fact that Ukraine will defend themselves. The PM, who is attending a 2 p.m. meeting of G7 leaders, was woken before dawn by a phone call with the news that Russian forces had mounted an assault on Ukraine from the north, the south and the east. Warning sirens blared through Ukraine's capital Kyiv in the early hours as Moscow began to attack by air, land and sea. In a chilling early morning statement, Vladimir Putin said he was launching a special military operation in response to unfounded accusations of aggression from Ukraine. He warned Western leaders they would face consequences they have never seen if they tried to intervene. At least 40 casualties have been reported, with footage emerging of queues of traffic fleeing the Ukrainian capital. Western officials believe Russia intends to seize and control a very large section of Ukraine, including the capital Kiev, and will need ground troops to do so. They fear this will lead to large numbers of civilian injuries and deaths with fighting in the built-up urban area. But they are unclear whether that will mean occupying the whole country, for which Russian forces do not yet appear to be ready. Likewise, Western officials are unclear whether Vladimir Putin intends Russia to rule Ukraine directly, or to replace the government in Kiev with a more favorable puppet regime. Western intelligence suggests Russian forces spilled over Ukraine's border from multiple directions including from Russia to Donbas, from Belarus and from occupied Crimea. There was a cyber attack on Ukrainian financial institutions last night, and a large number of missile strikes on Mariupol port this morning but no amphibious attack in the opening hours. Not all of the estimated 165,000 Russian troops that were amassed near the borders have yet invaded. But large numbers of Russian special forces are flooding into Ukraine to soften up resistance, officials believe. Meanwhile, Western intelligence suggests a Russian aircraft was shot down by Ukrainian forces on Thursday morning. It comes after Ukraine's military said 5 Russian planes and 1 helicopter were shot down over its Luhansk region. Russia had denied the reports. Mr. Johnson was woken by a pre-4 a.m. phone call, then spoke to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky before chairing an emergency Cobra meeting at 7:30 a.m. Ahead of the meeting, he said, President Putin has chosen a path of bloodshed and destruction by launching this unprovoked attack on Ukraine. The UK and our allies will respond decisively. The PM is due to give a statement to MPs at 5 p.m. on the latest package of sanctions, after the first round of action against 3 individuals and 5 banks was criticized for not going far enough. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss summoned the Russian ambassador for the second time this week to demand an explanation for the illegal, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. She warned the UK would be imposing severe sanctions in response to the Kremlin's actions. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg described Russia's actions as a blatant violation of international law as the alliance agreed to strengthen air, land and sea forces on the eastern flank near Ukraine and Russia. Speaking at NATO HQ in Brussels, he said, "This is a grave moment of the security of Europe. Russia's unprovoked and unjustified attack on Ukraine is putting countless lives at risk. This is a deliberate, cold-blooded and long-planned invasion. It is a blatant violation of international law, an act of aggression against a sovereign, independent and peaceful country and a serious threat to Euro-Atlantic security." In other developments, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps instructed the Civil Aviation Authority to ensure airlines avoid Ukraine airspace following the horrific events overnight. Airlines have begun suspending flights to and from Ukraine. The UK's ambassador in Ukraine, Melinda Simmons, repeated a call for Britons to leave the country. Leaders of the G7 nations, the UK, US, France, Germany, Italy, Canada and Japan, will have a virtual meeting to consider their response. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said a package of massive and targeted sanctions will be presented to European leaders for approval. Ukraine's President Mr. Zelensky declared a state of martial law. Labour leader Keir Starmer said, "All those who believe in the triumph of democracy over dictatorship, good over evil, freedom over the jackboot of tyranny must now support the Ukrainian people. They have been cast onto the front line of a war, simply for existing." Officials are monitoring for cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns from Moscow. Home Secretary Priti Patel said, "Russia's unjustified and unjustifiable attack on a democratic sovereign nation makes this a dark day in Europe. The people of Ukraine have our unwavering support. As we monitor developments, we will be especially mindful of the potential for cyber attacks and disinformation emanating from Russia. Be in no doubt, there is work ongoing across government 24/7 to maximize our resilience to any such attacks, which would be met with a suitably robust response." Full statement to the nation by Boris Johnson. Shortly after 4 o'clock this morning I spoke to President Zelensky of Ukraine to offer the continued support of the UK, because our worst fears have now come true and all our warnings have proved tragically accurate. President Putin of Russia has unleashed war in our European continent. He has attacked a friendly country without any provocation and without any credible excuse. Innumerable missiles and bombs have been raining down on an entirely innocent population. A vast invasion is underway by land, by sea and by air. And this is not in the infamous phrase "some faraway country of which we know little." We have Ukrainian friends in this country, neighbors, co-workers. Ukraine is a country that for decades has enjoyed freedom and democracy and the right to choose its own destiny. We, and the world, cannot allow that freedom just to be snuffed out. We cannot and will not just look away. It is because we have been so alarmed in recent months at the Russian intimidation that the UK became one of the first countries in Europe to send defensive weaponry to help the Ukrainians. Other allies have now done the same and we will do what more we can in the days ahead. Today, in concert with our allies, we will agree a massive package of economic sanctions designed in time to hobble the Russian economy. And to that end we must also collectively cease the dependence on Russian oil and gas that for too long has given Putin his grip on Western politics. Our mission is clear. Diplomatically, politically, economically, and eventually, militarily, this hideous and barbaric venture of Vladimir Putin must end in failure. And so I say to the people of Russia, whose president has just authorized a tidal wave of violence against a fellow Slavic people. The parents of Russian soldiers who will lose their lives, I cannot believe this is being done in your name or that you really want the pariah status it will bring to the Putin regime. And I say to the Ukrainians in this moment of agony, we are with you. We are praying for you and your families, and we are on your side. And if the months ahead are grim, and the flame of freedom burns low, I know that it will blaze bright again in Ukraine. Because for all his bombs and tanks and missiles, I don't believe that the Russian dictator will ever subdue the national feeling of the Ukrainians and their passionate belief that their country should be free. And I say to the British people, and all who have heard the threats from Putin against those who stand with Ukraine, we will of course do everything to keep our country safe. We are joined in our outrage by friends and allies around the world. We will work with them, for however long it takes, to ensure that the sovereignty and independence of Ukraine is restored. Because this act of wanton and reckless aggression is an attack not just on Ukraine. It is an attack on democracy and freedom in East Europe and around the world. This crisis is about the right of a free, sovereign, independent European people to choose their own future. And that is a right that the UK will always defend.